In this video, we'll do a recap of Season 3. We'll recap all the national park units that we went to, and we'll also fill you in with the details that didn't make into the videos. Then, we also share some camping stats, like the average nightly cost for our Season 3. And in the end, I will also share analysis that I've done on what's the maximum length of the RV to be able to fit in all the national park campgrounds in Colorado.
Just in case you're new here, let's just give you a quick intro. So I'm Matt and this is Diana, and we quit our jobs in July 2018 and hit the road full-time in our outdoors RV travel trailer to travel around the country visiting all 419 national park units.
Season 3 is all about Colorado. It covers June through September of 2019, and we see all the national parks and some national park units in Colorado and one unit in Utah as well. If you want to know what happened at the beginning of the season, watch Season 3 intro. There we cover all the details of things that happened before we hit the first national park unit. One special thing about our time in Colorado was that my brother Giannis joined us for a 2-week trip. He really likes mountains and hiking, so we planned our time to visit all the Colorado's national parks. They provide enough diversity to be able to see different aspects of Colorado. Just keep in mind, if you were going to do a similar trip like that, they're quite spread out. So we had to do quite a lot of driving between the parks.
So Giannis flew into Denver Airport and we gave him, a couple of days just to acclimate to the elevation and things. And then we were straight off to our first national park unit for Colorado, which was Rocky Mountain National Park. Now, we had been super excited about going here. We'd managed to book a camping spot there as well inside the park, which was fantastic. And we spent a good few days there just doing some lovely hiking. We did a few different areas of the park as well. It's a pretty big park with different areas. And it was really nice to get out and do some hikes in those different areas. If you haven't seen the videos for that, be sure to check those out because there are some really, really nice hikes and nice views in there.
And just in general, all our videos about Colorado are in a Season 3 playlist, so you can find all of them there.
So from Rocky Mountain National Park, we headed actually on one of the longer driving days, didn't we?
Yeah. Next stop was Black Canyon of the Gunnison National Park. And for my brother, that was his favorite because he had never in his life seen canyons. And it's true for me. Before I came to the United States, I had never seen a canyon before. So that was really spectacular to see. So we did a little bit of hiking. We stayed at the campground inside the park. And it was a short but very sweet stay.
Yeah, we were there just overnight, weren't we?
Yeah.
And then the next day we hit the road again, much shorter drive this time, just down the road to Curecanti National Recreation Area. And that did not go as planned, did it? That was a bit of a mess up.
Yeah, we were planning to do some kayaking, but unfortunately when we went to rent the kayaks at 3 o'clock, they said that they don't rent it after that time. And even though it wasn't listed anywhere that that's the policy, the place is open till 5. But we still made the best out of it, and me and Giannis, we still went for a swim, and it was a good time. I would love to go back to Curecanti National Recreational Area because it's a really big area, there's a lot of things to do, and you can totally spend a week there just relaxing.
And again, it was only a short visit for us there, with Giannis with us for only 2 weeks. We wanted to see as much as we possibly could. So just after one night there, we drove back down kind of towards the Durango area, didn't we?
Yep.
And we drove the $1 Million Highway with the RV. We've got an awesome 360-degree video of us towing the RV along the $1 Million Highway. So that's definitely one to check out if you haven't seen that.
Yeah, and at Mesa Verde, we spent a whole day. We started with ranger guided tour of the Cliff Palace that we booked ahead of time. And then after that, we did more hikes in Mesa Verde. And it was just one day, but it was fully packed and we got to see a few different areas. So that was nice too. And remember, Mesa Verde is actually a really big park. So to get from like different spurs, it takes a while to drive. So keep that in mind.
So after Mesa Verde, was it Great Sand Dunes next? Okay, so Great Sand Dunes National Park and Preserve, 2 units for the price of 1 at this one. So we headed over there and we stayed at an RV park nearby with some really nice like indoor swimming pools and things. We didn't get a chance to use them because our visit went horrifically wrong. If you haven't seen the video about us getting stranded when we went off-roading, be sure to check that one out. We had a lovely afternoon just out in the dunes and just really relaxing.
We did some sandboarding.
Yeah, did some sandboarding on the dunes. And then we started off-roading, and the weather just turned on us, and essentially a flash flood came through the area and stranded us on the road. The ordeal is all in the video, and definitely check that one out. That is something that I think I'll remember for a long, long time. We definitely learned some stuff. If we were doing it again with the benefit of hindsight, maybe we would have done some things differently. But we just had to do what we thought was right at the time in the heat of the moment, and yeah, that one will stick with me for a long time.
That was the last national park that Giannis saw, so we headed back to Denver, and Giannis flew out of the Denver airport.
Once we dropped him off, we spent just a couple of days in Denver before heading back down to Leadville for a while.
Adventurous way.
Is that the highest place we've ever camped as well?
I think so.
It's at like 10,000 feet.
Yeah.
So super, super high elevation, but really good fun. We had a really good time there.
And then after that, we went boondocking to Twin Lakes, which is not too far from Leadville. And I think that was probably Matt's favorite spot of all times.
Yeah, we've said before that we really like the fact that this trailer it's small enough that it can get us places that most people just can't get to. It's got the high clearance and the suspension and things to do it, which is great, but you've actually got to use that ability for it to mean anything. And that's kind of what happened at Twin Lakes. We got there and a couple of our friends were like, well, there's this spot up on the ridge that looks amazing, but we just can't get up there in our vans and things. Maybe you guys can. So we looked at it, and yeah, we made it. It was a tough climb up there with the trailer. Diana was a little nervous.
Yeah, let's not do that again.
But the views at the top were unreal. It was absolutely incredible. We just had this completely open panoramic view out across the lake, and better yet, because we were up on the ridge, we had amazing cell signal. So everyone else was struggling with cell signal lower down, but we had great cell signal there.
Would you say that's the favorite boondocking spot you ever stayed at?
I don't think it's quite the favourite, but it's way up there. I think for me, the Derby-Well Road one, I still really, really enjoyed. Just so peaceful, so scenic. But that one at Twin Lakes was pretty special. I don't know that I would be brave enough to do it again, to be honest, but I'm glad we did. So after leaving Twin Lakes, we headed round to actually the same boondocking spot, or pretty well the same boondocking spot we'd been in for Mesa Verde just a few weeks before. And while we were there, we lucked out. Our favourite spot was open there, and it has these beautiful views out across the valley. And there's only space for maybe a couple of RVs down there. It's pretty small. And we just kind of parked our truck over the entrance just so we had a bit of privacy and seclusion and things there. And while we were there, we got a text the next morning from a friend of ours saying that some other friends of ours were in the area and they'd found this beautiful spot they wanted to go to, but they couldn't get there because there was a truck blocking the road down to the end and there was someone obviously camped down there. Turns out that was us. So anyway, it would have been too tight for two random RVs to park next to each other there, but when we found out that was our friends Brian and Lee from Campendium, Diane actually went over to them and found them, and they moved their trailer and came and parked next to us. And that worked really well, because while we were there, the truck actually went in for some service work for a few days. And so it was nice having some friends nearby, so that if we did need something, we weren't completely stranded in the middle of nowhere with no truck.
Speaking of service, we wanted to do the service while we were in Leadville, but we ended up doing it in Durango because we had been in Durango before and we had done different service at that place and we really liked that place. So.
Yeah, and specifically the work that needed doing, it wasn't just like a routine service. I'd actually got a blown exhaust manifold gasket, and the shop needed the truck for a couple of days. And we took it into this dealer not too far from Leadville. And I don't know, I just wasn't convinced. I didn't like what they were proposing they had to do to the truck. It didn't gel with what I thought needed doing. So I phoned around a couple of other dealers and they agreed that something didn't sound quite right there. So in the end, we called back to Durango Motor Company where we'd taken it back in May, June time, I think, for some other bits and pieces to be done. And the service there had been fantastic, which is why we drove back round to Durango, because we have the flexibility. We can take the truck wherever we want to get the work done. And sure enough, they did the work with no problems. They really looked after us super well. It took a lot less time than it would have done at the other place. So all in, I was really, really pleased with the service there.
That's actually one thing that I didn't expect, that over time we would find these companies that we really like their service, and then we would go back to them again when we passed through the area. I thought that, you would just go through every place once, but it turns out we return to our favorite areas.
And likewise, when we find somewhere where the service is really good and the customer service is really good, not only are we more likely to go back there, but we share that with our RVing friends, and they do likewise within the community as well. So you start to build up this network of places that you trust or don't trust.
Yeah.
And I've seen so many times people have said, "Hey, anyone know a good diesel repair shop near X?" And there'll just be a half dozen recommendations for places within an hour or two that are I've been there, I've tried it, it's good. So it's a pretty cool kind of network of these things. So from Durango, or near Mancos, I guess, we headed on to our next national park unit. So we drove up through Moab rather than back along the $1 Million Highway. Drove up to over near Grand Junction, Colorado, to visit Colorado National Monument.
And that was super fun. We spent 2 days there, and we did hiking where we saw bighorn sheep. So that was a treat. We hadn't seen bighorn sheep before. And we did obviously the scenic drive through the park. And I also did some biking, and Matt did some sunrise photography.
And speaking of sun, it was so hot there.
Yes.
We had to do all our exploring before lunch because it was just so hot in the afternoons. That is the one time I think we've been on the road where we've genuinely considered going and buying a generator so we could run the AC.
It was over 100 degrees.
It was 110 degrees each day.
And as long as we were in the trailer completely sealed in, I think the temperature was still bearable up until noon.
Yeah.
But then after that, we had to go to town to either library or movie theater or coffee shop.
Just somewhere with AC. It was, because where we were camped as well, it was a beautiful spot, but it was kind of in a little, almost box canyon.
Yeah.
So it was you were just baking. You were surrounded by hot rocks. But that was pretty incredible.
Yeah.
So from Colorado National Monument, we headed to our next spot. Also keen to find a camping spot. There's a little higher elevation where it might be a little cooler.
And we found one.
We found one.
And that was at Dinosaur National Monument. And we found this beautiful spot kind of up on a mountain top.
It was on the ridge, yeah.
On a ridge. So wind provided really nice breeze and really nice views.
That I think is probably also one of my favourite boondocking spots. No facilities around. You're 12 miles from the nearest road, I think.
Yeah.
And even then, it's another hour before you get to any facilities of any kind. But stunningly beautiful.
Yeah.
Really cool.
So that was our base for exploring Dinosaur National Monument for 2 days. Obviously, we did the quarry and saw the dinosaur bones. But we also did rafting, which is not something I thought that I would be doing at a Dinosaur National Monument, but turns out it's quite a big deal to be rafting through Yampa River that goes... was it Yampa and Green River?
Through Split Mountain.
Yeah, so that was super fun.
So one of the reasons that we had started moving up north through the state is because we were trying to make our way up to Oregon. So we had been in conversations with Outdoors RV, and on the back of having won the Outdoors RV photo contest that they had run, a few months before, they had invited us up to the factory tour. Now, we've done the factory tour before, and it's one of the reasons that we actually bought the Outdoors RV that we have now. Not only were we super impressed by what we saw at the factory, but actually it was this model just happened to be in the lot afterwards for us to look around. And that's the first time we'd seen this floor plan. So we've done the factory tour before, and they said, well, what happens if this time we let you come along and also let you film the tour? So they've never let people do photography really, or filming inside on the tour. They like people to come and see it in person. So we were very interested in this. And after a lot of discussions and things, it's obviously a long way away from where we were. We decided that we were going to go up to Oregon and do that factory tour. And so that's why we were moving up this way. So from Dinosaur National Monument, our next stop was up into Utah, just north of Salt Lake City, as we kind of headed on up that way. And we stopped in to see Golden Spike National Historical Park.
Yeah, and Golden Spike National Historical Park commemorates the last spike that was driven in to connect the train lines from east to west. And it was a significant part of American history.
And also there's trains,
Yes.
which makes everything cool.
Yes.
So we had a great time there. The weather was perfect, and we were out there just watching the trains, and we had a reenactment and things there.
Yeah, and those trains are the replicas of the two of the original trains, but they look super fancy.
They are super, super cool. If you have kids, especially,
Oh, yeah.
that is like a must-do. Or if, like us, you're just big kids at heart, it's an absolute must-do. Really, really enjoyed that. But from there, we kind of headed on north, all the way up to Oregon. We stayed there for 2 or 3 weeks, I guess, in total. As we stopped in to see Thompson RV, the dealership that sells outdoors RV up there in Pendleton, Oregon, and then down to La Grande, Oregon to do the factory tour. After that, we then headed all the way south down to Nevada, and we made it down to Reno, or specifically Sparks, Nevada, where we dropped in to see Battleborn Batteries' new factory. So they had also invited us to come and do a tour of their brand new factory that we've put on our YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, so all those factory tour videos, we published them kind of ahead of time as soon as we did them, so they have been on our channel for a while. And then after that...
Well, the route from Sparks in Nevada, we wanted to make it back to Colorado because our next kind of appointment on the calendar was the Albuquerque Balloon Fiesta about, a month or so later. So we had to make our way back kind of Colorado direction, and that took us across US 50, also known as the loneliest road in America, which again is one we've done before, but not with the RV.
Yeah.
So that was pretty good fun driving over there. It's a long way. There's not a lot to see out there, but we made it all the way over and back to Colorado, and actually again back to the same boondocking spot we'd been at before. It's one of our favorites, that one.
The last unit that we saw in Colorado was Yucca House National Monument. And this is a very interesting unit. It's very small, and it actually preserves an area that had Native American history, but it's not excavated.
It's all there underground.
Yeah.
And I think if you're really into understanding the history of the ancestral Pueblo and culture that was there at the time, or if you're trying to hit all 419 national park units, it's definitely worth visiting. It is one of the most significant archaeological sites in Colorado. That being said, if you don't know what to expect, if you haven't done your research and you're not already fairly knowledgeable about those things,
you're just going to see a field.
You're going to look at a field. Now, we were a little bit lucky in that we had managed to reserve a place on one of the ranger guided tours.
Yeah.
And the reason I say lucky is because there's not many of those. In fact, in the whole of 2019, they did 4. There were 2 in May and 2 in September, and we'd managed to get onto one of them.
Yeah, so if you want to visit, I would recommend trying to align it with one of those tours, or just skip it unless you really, really, really want to check it off.
Yeah, and if you do want to check it off, stop in at the Mesa Verde Visitor Center beforehand, and they've got some guides and things and some maps that can help you kind of interpret things, but you're going to have to work pretty hard to interpret that one for yourself. There's no facilities, there's no visitor centers, not even any signs there.
Yeah.
It's pretty basic. And that for us was the last national park unit in season 3.
And after that, we are heading down to Albuquerque Balloon Fiesta. But that will be the start of season 4.
So season 3 was a real kind of mixed bag. We had that real intense period in Colorado with Giannis as we were traveling around trying to visit as much as we could during his 2-week vacation. And then kind of this like rogue splinter arm that we did heading off all the way up to Oregon with a few stops along the way as well. That being said, we had a lot of fun. Colorado is one of our favourite states.
Yes.
It was so beautiful, and we are so jealous of the people that live there that get to enjoy that year round.
And we could totally spend another whole summer in Colorado.
Absolutely. And we met some amazing people along the way. A couple that invited us to go and stay with them for a while. We instead just took them up on the offer of dinner for a couple of nights.
And another couple invited us to go see Mount Evans. That was super fun.
So yeah, it's a really nice state. We had a really nice time there, not just because of the natural beauty, but honestly the people were fantastic as well. So for all of those of you out there who live in Colorado, thank you for making us feel so welcome. We had an amazing time. But that was the end of season 3 for us, really. And yeah, let's share some stats, shall we, on some of the camping we did.
Yeah, so the stats cover 157 days, and we boondocked 69% of the time. And again, boondocking for us is dispersed camping on public lands with no facilities. And we dry camped additional 20% of the time, which was at the Escapers event, the National Park campgrounds, on BLM campgrounds, Boondocking, even at the RV park. We chose to dry camp instead of having full hookups so that we can save some money. And with our setup, it allows that flexibility to do that.
So what that means, just to add those together, we spent 90% of our time in season 3 dry camping or boondocking.
Yeah.
Only 10% of the time did we actually have hookups.
Yeah, and actually portion of hookups. We only had full hookups for 4 nights, or 3% of all of the stays. And compared to season 1, full hookups was 14%, season 2 was 5%, and season 3 was 3%. So we're definitely trending down.
Ditch the hookups.
Yeah. We also spent 1 night in hotel in Reno.
Oh yeah.
For a change.
We treated ourselves to a hotel, didn't we?
Yeah, 1 night. So overall, the average camping cost was $5.92 a night, and
$5.92 a night.
yes,
So less than $6 a night we averaged.
Yes.
That's insane.
and that's mostly because we spent so much time boondocking on public lands.
The other thing I think about, like, when you boondock so much is that when you do find an RV park, if the location is good or the features are good or whatever, you don't mind spending a bit more on it to
Yes.
kind of be in the right place, because you're only going to be there a few nights and you're camping free the rest of the time.
And that was the case. Actually, the full hookup part that we stayed was $60 a night. That was because it was near Denver.
Oh, he's the one in Denver, yeah.
Yeah.
And that wasn't anything particularly special amenity-wise,
No,
was it?
It was one of
But-
the cheapest.
But it put us in the right place to be near the airport and things.
Yeah. Otherwise, dry camping average cost, if you stayed at national park campgrounds, it was $20 a night. For the places where we stayed, it was just water and electric. That was $33.50 a night on average.
And water and electric works pretty well for us, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like,
Especially if you don't stay there too long.
yeah.
In terms of driving, our average towing day was 162 miles, with the longest towing day was 559 miles. And that was the drive from La Grande, Oregon to Reno, Nevada.
That was a long day. I remember that one well because we arrived there pretty late. We'd been watching the cell signal as we came into the boondocking spot, and there was loads of ATVs around, and the cell signal just died as we got there, and we're like, oh no, we've been driving all day and there's no cell signal and it's super noisy and loud and dusty. And we're like, let's just keep going further back, just see if we can find somewhere a bit quieter. And we kind of came over this ridge, and I think that's the fastest cell signal we've ever had in a boondocking spot ever. Was it like 150 meg or something
like that.
crazy that we had? The only downside was being fairly close to California, there was some wildfires in California, and the next morning we woke up and it was like this smoky fog everywhere. So we actually had to leave that morning and find somewhere else. But it
was just so funny that then when we were in Reno, the internet speed was way slower than outside of it.
It's such is life.
Yeah. So, and then a few more fun stats. The total miles we hiked inside the national parks was 31. I cycled 33 miles. That was a Colorado National Monument. And it was 9 miles of rafting in Dinosaur National Monument.
I like that we got rafting in there
Yes.
as a mileage. That's
Yes.
awesome.
So that wraps up some of the basic camping stats. The next segment, let's talk about how big an RV you should have to be able to fit in national parks.
So just a bit of context here. One of the questions that we get asked a lot, we see come up on a lot of forums and a lot of kind of Facebook groups and things is, I'm looking to buy an RV. How big an RV can I get and still get into the national park campgrounds? And I think what a lot of people then start to explain, and what we certainly try to explain, is there's not necessarily like a hard limit.
Yes.
It's kind of like the smaller you are, the more camping spots will be available to you. And given how quickly they sell out, if the campground that you're looking at only has a handful of spots for your size of rig, you might have quite a hard time getting one of those. Whereas if you can get in any of their spots and they've got 100 sites, you've got a lot more chance of finding the site you're after. We also find, and we're going to talk about size of the RV today, but we've also found that flexibility around hookups is a big thing as well. And so this is one of the reasons that we wanted to stay small in the RV, but also to give ourselves the flexibility for being comfortable without hookups to dry camp. And we've used both of those well. Like we've used that option several times. But what you've done now is some analysis to say, okay, let's put some numbers behind this. Like, if I'm a certain size, where can I fit?
Yeah. So I have my computer here with some of the numbers. This is fairly manual analysis. So I took all the national park campgrounds in national parks and national park units in Colorado, which you can reserve through
Recreation.gov.
Yeah.
Yep.
All the sites that you can reserve through recreation.gov, because that website, for each particular site, it provides what is the maximum length of the travel trailer or motorhome that you can fit in there.
And just in case you're thinking like, yeah, but they say like 25 foot, like I can probably sneak a 30 foot in there.
No.
Yeah,
Depends.
probably not. If you're thinking of doing anything like that, definitely try and like give them a call first to ask. I know when we got to Black Canyon of the Gunnison, the site that we had reserved was 25 feet. Yeah, they weren't joking.
Yeah.
It was a 25-foot site, and we still had to put the truck somewhere. So that was a really, really tight squeeze.
Yeah.
For overnight, it was fine, but I wouldn't have wanted to be there a week or something. So we're just going to go by the size that they say the site is.
Yes.
And if you want to play around beyond that, that's up to you.
Yeah.
Good luck.
So this analysis includes campgrounds like Glacier Basin, Aspen Glen, Moraine Park in Rocky Mountain National Park. They have other campgrounds that are not reservable. So this analysis only includes the ones that you can reserve online. It also includes Pinion Flats in Great Sand Dunes, Southern Campground in Black Canyon, the Gunnison, Green River in Dinosaur, Salahorn in Colorado National Monument, and 3 campgrounds in Curecanti National Recreational Area. This does not include Moorfield Campground in Mesa Verde National Park, because although it is reservable, it's a different company that runs it, and it doesn't provide anywhere what's the maximum length for each of the site. So I couldn't include it when running this analysis. And these lengths are for, because it depends on the size of the site, it's from RV tip to tip. And remember that some RV manufacturers, they will call the model number different length than the actual length.
Yeah, so like our RV is a model number 21, which you would think means it's 21 feet long, but it's actually not. It's 24 foot 10. So don't just assume that you're going to fit in because of the model number.
Okay, drum roll. The maximum length of the RV, if you want to fit in at least one spot in every single campground in Colorado, it is 40 feet. If you want to fit in at least one spot in every single campground, then that's 30 feet. Because different parks, they will have multiple campgrounds, and the different campgrounds will have different maximum length. So for example, Colorado, one campground has spots for a 40-foot rig, but a different campground will only have spots for up to 30-foot rig.
So just to make sure I'm following them, so if your rig is more than 40 feet long, there is not a campground in every national park unit that you can fit in?
Yes.
And if your RV is more than 30 feet long, you can't even fit in every campground anymore. There will be at least one campground in every national park unit that you can get in, but not every campground.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, that's correct. In Colorado. And then to be able to fit in every single reservable spot in Colorado system on recreation.gov, your trailer has to be 12 feet long.
12 feet long.
12 feet long.
That is insane. So that's like a teardrop style,
Yes.
like pop-up or something.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's because there's one campground in Rocky Mountain National Park that has quite a few of these spots that only allow up to 12 feet of trailer or RV.
And that's basically like car camping almost at
Yes,
that point, like a
yes.
super, super small.
Yeah.
So.
And tents are allowed in those spots as well.
Gotcha.
All right, so those are kind of the hard limits, but basically the bigger the rig, there's less spots available. So how much less? If you have a 40-foot rig, you will not fit in some of the campgrounds. You may have a single spot in some campgrounds. So for example, in Great Sand Dunes National Park, there is a single spot that accommodates 40-foot rig.
So you got to get that one.
Yes, just that particular one. And, it's booked for most of the summer. So really, basically, it's not much chance. Or, depending on some other campgrounds, you might fit in actually most of the sites. So, for example, Elk Creek Campground at Curecanti National Recreational Area, they have really big sites there, and you will fit in 92% of those sites, even with a 40-foot
And that's
rig.
probably because Curecanti is like a newer sort of managed area.
Yeah, or maybe because it's recreational area.
Yeah, well, it's big and flat, and it's been deliberately created more recently, I think,
Yeah.
to accommodate recreation, like you say.
Yeah.
So yeah, but if you've got those bigger rigs, it can vary a lot then.
Yeah. But if I take all the spots from all the campgrounds, it will be 35% of all the reservable spots in Colorado that a 40-foot RV could fit.
So about a third of the sites.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, you might read or heard other analysis about this kind of stuff. Some of them focuses on percent of campgrounds that will allow such RV. But here I'm focusing on the number of available spots inside the campground.
But those still could be distributed such that a lot of them sit within one area. Like of those
absolutely.
35%, a lot of them will be in Curecanti.
Exactly. Yeah. So then if you have a 35-foot RV, you still may not fit in some of the campgrounds, or some of the campgrounds may have only 15% of the spots that are available for a 35-foot rig. On average, 51% of the spots will accommodate a 35-foot RV, which I think that's pretty good. It's more than I thought it would be.
So if you've got an RV that really is tip to tip 35 feet or less, half basically of all the camping sites in Colorado in national park units are open to reserve.
Yeah.
But half aren't. I mean, like you've the other way of looking at that is the glass half full, glass half empty thing, right? I mean, like you've still got half of them available, but if you're shorter still, you just get more and more available.
Yeah, and like some other states might have campgrounds that are more like even smaller, and they won't have any spots in any campgrounds. But for Colorado, for this analysis, it's half the spots. If you have a 30-foot RV, there are some campgrounds where at least 35% of the spots will be available, or there are even some campgrounds where every single spot can accommodate a 30-foot RV.
Is that Curecanti again, is it?
Yes, that's Curecanti. On average, you would fit in 68% of the spots.
About 2/3.
Yeah. Then, if you have a 25-foot RV...
Which is basically what we're in here, right?
Yeah.
So it's about the size of ours.
Yeah. We would fit in at least half of the spots in every single campground.
Wow.
And total, on average, it will be 81% of the spots.
So just to give some context there then, so if you've got a 30-foot RV versus our 20-foot RV, we've got a significant number of more options of spots we can go in. And remember, we can go in the bigger spots as well as the smaller spots.
Yes.
We usually try and book the smallest spot that we'll fit in, just so we leave those larger spots free for people with bigger rigs. But if there's no 25-foot sites available, we'll book ourselves into a 30 or a 35 or a 40-foot spot if that's all there is.
Yep.
And so I always feel bad when we do that, but if the choice is having a site or not, we don't really have a choice.
Yep. So then if you have a 20-foot RV, on average it will fit in 94% of the spots.
And 20 foot's pretty small as an RV now. I mean, you're getting into the smaller ultralights.
Yeah.
I guess some of the Airstream, like Bambis and things, are probably getting into that realm as well.
Yep.
But you're in pretty small. It's probably too small for us to full time in, I think.
Yeah. And 90, the plus side is 94% of the spots you would be able to fit in. And then if you're 15 feet RV, you would fit in 99% of the spots. And you would have to be 12 foot long to fit in every single reservable spot in Colorado.
So if you think about these numbers then, what you're basically saying is that if my RV is 35 feet long, I can get into about half the spots. 30 feet long, it goes up to about 2/3 of the spots.
Yeah.
If I can get to 25 feet long like we are, we're up to like 85% of the spots or something.
81%.
81%. And after that, it tails off, I guess, as it gets towards 100. But there is a real kind of inflection point there, I guess, at 30 feet,
Yeah.
where you've got 2/3 of the spots now open to you.
Yeah. And they, between 30 feet and 35 feet, they would be distributed differently in different campgrounds. Like some campgrounds you'll have more spots available, but some campgrounds you still wouldn't be able to fit in.
And particularly with the really large rigs, I mean, we hear it all the time, it's to do with the age of the national park campground.
Yes.
The older campgrounds just weren't designed for giant tag axle diesel pusher Class A's and triple axle fifth wheel toy haulers and things, which is why they just can't fit these bigger rigs.
And that's not to say that you're not going to have a good time. There are plenty of private campgrounds right outside the park that you can totally stay there with really big rigs.
So I guess our message to you is, if you're thinking about buying an RV, there isn't really like a hard cutoff. And this, again, is just for Colorado, but I think it probably tallies with what we've seen elsewhere, roughly speaking. So the smaller you can go, the more options you'll have. And the national park campgrounds, they're usually fully booked all the time. So certainly in peak seasons. So the smaller you are, the more choices you'll have, the more chance you have of getting a spot somewhere. I was going to say, just because you have a larger rig doesn't mean that you're out of luck.
Yes.
Okay, so we've been talking about like how small your rig has to be to fit into these places. What's the largest spot? What's the biggest rig that any national park campground can accommodate?
You could have a 75-foot rig and you still would have at least one spot in national park system.
There's someone out there with a 75-foot rig that's like, I can't leave. It's the only place for me.
That would be at Green River Campground in Dinosaur National Monument.
That is amazing. I love that. I want to go and see that spot now. I also want to see like what the biggest rig they've ever had in that spot is.
Yeah.
I've never seen a 75-foot rig. I'm sure it's not even possible.
Yeah.
But, that's pretty cool. Okay, so to wrap up that analysis, I hope that's just given you some kind of an idea as to what size of RVs will fit into how many of the different campgrounds. But no matter what you have, there's a lot of fun to be had out there. As we found in Colorado this summer, we've had an amazing time in Season 3. Thank you so much for joining us in this video. And if we've talked about some of the national parks in Season 3 that you haven't seen yet, be sure to go back and check them out. Or better yet, watch the whole of Season 3. We kick it off with an intro of some of the places we're going to go, which you've heard about today, and then you can just binge watch all the way through those videos.
And you can find all of that on our channel. We have playlists for each season. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in the next video. Okay.
Or do you want me to do the intro?
No, that's fine because it's about my brother.
Just remember, it's your brother, not our brother.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it makes it feel really weird between us.
You can even find a spot if you had a 75-foot long rig.
What?
Yes.
No way.
Yes.